I hear you saying often that you're not turned on to politics. Well, let me bring to bear the lessons of history. If you're not turned on to politics, the lesson of history is that politics will turn on you.
It doesn't much matter what people think, because you've got a bludgeon over their head and you can control what they do. But when the state loses the bludgeon, when you can't control people by force, and when the voice of the people can be heard, you have this problem. It may make people so curious and so arrogant that they don't have the humility to submit to a civil rule, and therefore you have to control what people think.
And the standard way to do this is to resort to what in more honest days used to be called propaganda. Manufacture of consent, creation of necessary illusions, various ways of either marginalizing the general public or reducing them to apathy in some fashion.
When we talk about manufacturing of consent, whose consent is being manufactured?
We can, to start with, there are two different groups. We can get into more detail, but at the first level of approximation, there's two targets for propaganda. One is what's sometimes called the political class. There's maybe 20% of the population which is relatively educated, more or less articulate. They play some kind of role in decision making. They're supposed to sort of participate in social life, either as managers or cultural managers, like, say, teachers and writers and so on. They're supposed to vote. They're supposed to play some role in the way economic and political and cultural life goes on. Now, their consent is crucial. It's one group that has to be deeply indoctrinated. Then there's maybe 80% of the population whose main function is to follow orders and not to think, and not to pay attention to anything. And they're the ones who usually pay the costs.
All right.
What I mean is,
it's like asking, how do the elites control General Motors? Well, why isn't that a question? I mean, General Motors is an institution of the elites. They don't have to control it. They own it.
Except, I guess, at a certain level, I think, I guess I work with student press, so I know, like, reporters and stuff.
The elites don't control the student press, but I'll tell you something. You try in the student press to do anything that breaks out of conventions, and you're going to have the whole business community around here down on your neck, and the university's going to get threatened, and, I mean, maybe nobody will pay any attention to you. That's possible. But if you get to the point where they don't stop paying attention to you, the pressures will start coming. Because there are people with power. There are people who own the country, and they're not going to let the country get out of control.
And that's why the propaganda system is so successful. Very few people are going to have the time or the energy or the commitment to carry out the constant battle that's required to get outside of, McNeil there or Dan Rather or somebody like that. The easy thing to do, you come home from work, you're tired, you've had a busy day, you're not going to spend the evening carrying out a research project. So you turn on the tube, you say it's probably right, or you look at the headlines in the paper and then you watch the sports or something. And that's basically the way the system of indoctrination works. Sure, the other stuff is there, but you're going to have to work to find it.
Modern industrial civilization has developed within a certain system of convenient myths. The driving force of modern industrial civilization has been individual material gain, which is accepted as legitimate, even praiseworthy, on the grounds that private vices yield public benefits in the classic formulation. Now, it's long been understood very well that a society that is based on this principle will destroy itself in time. It can only persist with whatever suffering and injustice it entails, as long as it's possible to pretend that the destructive forces that humans create are limited, that the world is an infinite resource, and that the world is an infinite garbage can. At this stage of history, either one of two things is possible. Either the general population will take control of its own destiny and will concern itself with community interests, guided by values of solidarity and sympathy and concern for others, or alternatively, there will be no destiny for anyone to control. As long as some specialized class is in a position of authority, it is going to set policy in the special interests that it serves. But the conditions of survival, let alone justice, require rational social planning in the interests of the community as a whole, and by now that means the global community. The question is whether privileged elites should dominate mass communication and should use this power as they tell us they must, namely to impose necessary illusions, to manipulate and deceive the stupid majority and remove them from the public arena. The question in brief is whether democracy and freedom are values to be preserved or threats to be avoided. In this possibly terminal phase of human existence, democracy and freedom are more than values to be treasured. They may well be essential to survival. Thank you.
In the great 1974 film The Godfather 2, there's a scene about halfway through where Hyman Roth and Michael Corleone and all the American gangsters are gathered on a patio in Havana. And it's Hyman Roth's 67th birthday. And he's giving a slice of the cake each gangster. He's got Louis from Chicago, you run the Copacabana. Frankie, you get the prostitutes. He's dividing up the island among all the American gangsters. And appropriately enough, the birthday cake has the outline of Cuba on it. So he's giving him a slice of Cuba. And while Hyman Roth is doing this, he says, "Isn't it great to be in a country with a government that respects private enterprise?" And that's how media policies have been done in the United States for the past 50 years. It is increasing in the last 20 years. Extraordinarily powerful lobbyists duke it out behind closed doors for the biggest slice of the cake. The public knows nothing about it. It doesn't participate.
Aren't they supposed to give you equal time? And I didn't even know for years that we lost that in the Reagan era, that for years we haven't had the ability to expect both sides to be adequately covered.
Clearly, on the Republican side, what we do know is that for years they have coordinated what they call their message of the day. So you'll hear on the floor of the House, you'll hear on Rush Limbaugh, you'll hear on Fox and Rupert Murdoch's network the issue of the day, which they will pound away at, which then creates the echo chamber, which resonates throughout America.
Here's what he said. I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it.
Senator Kerry recently said, quote, "I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it." End quote.
Kerry, starting to feel the heat for his flip-flop voting record, is in West Virginia.
Is President Bush doing a good job of defining Kerry as a flip-flopper?
And you're saying he flip-flopped on the issue of this?
Because he does seem to agonize and flip-flop over and over and over again.
He's flip-flopped on all these issues.
Beneath Kerry's flip-flopping
is an opportunistic flip-flopper.
You're talking flip-flops.
New brand of summer footwear, John Kerry flip-flops.
They say that he flip-flops a lot.
So he's flip-flopped now on every major issue.
Would those be the flip-flops?
Because he's flip-flopped on everything else.
Is Senator Kerry guilty of flip-flopping on the issue?
Flip-flops like crazy.
First of all, flip-flop.
You've seen him flip-flop on a whole variety of issues.
Opportunistic flip-flopper who doesn't have any principles. Is that a little harsh?
I think it shows one thing, the weakness of John Kerry.
You're watching Fox News, real journalism, fair and balanced.
Just 263 days until you get to cast your vote and decide that George W. Bush deserves a second term.
What we own, the public airway, has been surrendered to the most myopic and avaricious corporations. It is time for a change. The system is not working. This is the message of hope.
Best